So then you start thinking about, was 9/11 an event that was either, was it as Jose Arguelles would put it, was it an inevitable event? Sorry,
Yeah.
inevitable event. Was it designed by the universe for it to happen as it did?
Yeah.
You look into it further, and World Trade Center commenced building in 1966 and finished building it in 1977. So it took 11 years to create as well.
Yeah.
So you can move on from that and forget all that for the time being, and then you can get to September the 11th in history. And on September the 11th, 1990, at 9:09 p.m., that's 11 years prior to 9/11, George Bush Sr. made his very first speech entitled "Towards a New World Order" in the UN, at the UN. So this was 11 years prior. And then if you take that back 60 years, so you go back to September the 11th, 1941, you'll realise that 60 years to 9/11, that was when the soil was broken for the Pentagon.
Pentagon, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so you've got this date, September the 11th, again running through this kind of, the nasty war machine of America, if you want to call it that.
Exactly.
And so then basically there's something that happened much further back in time than that, and there's a book written in 1981, and it was called The Birth of Christ Recalculated, and it was written by a guy called Ernest L. Martin, and he claims to have calculated the exact date of Jesus Christ's birthday based on celestial charts for that era.
Yeah.
Basically, he's worked out with the famous Star of Bethlehem, which was, he worked out that essentially Jesus Christ was born on September the 11th, 3 BC. And this book was released in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've got another date there.
And I think that is, sorry to interrupt there, but I think that's actually a key area to why we potentially are seeing so many things oriented around the 9 and the 11 September.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, when it comes into other significant events, for instance, when you think about America and NASA and stuff, the very first shuttle that got to the moon was Apollo 11.
Yeah, there you go.
And then, for instance, in Great Britain, I'm sure I think it's celebrated around the world actually, but on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we celebrate Remembrance Day, in which, we honour our war dead, but it's on an 11/11, and it's basically, the Queen and a load of other people taking poppies to a cenotaph, which is an obelisk, essentially.
Yeah.
So, little strange events going on all over the place.
Indeed.
I mean, talking about the Queen moving into royalty, and this is where, I'll lead much deeper into royalty later on, but basically, if you look into the history of the word crown and the royal crown, the word crown was derived from Anglo-French word called couronne, which is derived from Latin for corona. But the year that the word crown, was first established was in the year 1111.
Really? That's interesting.
Right. So,
wow.
you can't just say that these are coincidences. All of these things that are kind of connected up. And I get to a point where, at first I thought there were coincidences, but then you think, what is this thing called chance?
Yeah.
What is it?
Indeed.
So anyhow, that's the groundwork for 11. And then this is where I'd started seeing this time code 1111 on clocks and stuff, and this is when I started getting this flood of information. I don't know where I've been receiving it from, but I've been receiving it from somewhere recently. I don't know what it's all about, to be honest. But basically, sorry.
No. I just wanted to say it's interesting, and to some extent, I think that this is in a way information that wants to get out. I think it's kind of a self-containing awareness within itself, meaning that it is trying to reach out and teach us how things are interconnected. And I think that numerology and so-called coincidence or meaningful coincidence, synchronicity, is a perfect way to demonstrate to us that everything is interconnected. And I think that there are so many levels to all of this. So what we're beginning to discover are some of the most, in a way, actually obvious and very clear signs of this. But I would imagine that this is something that actually runs throughout exactly everything. If you have, basically the amount of time to study something or look at it in close enough detail.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with all the 11s for me is essentially, I come from the viewpoint, I believe in a mind before matter universe.
Yeah.
Everything stems from consciousness. Consciousness precipitates matter, not the other way around, as scientists would have you believe it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way that I can, kind of prove that to myself and hopefully to others is that, I mean, I don't mean to be crude about this, but when, for instance, a man is sleeping and he has an orgasm in the middle of the night, right, the process that has created that is not any physical action. It's all stemmed from thought.
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, then obviously that thought has then created the ability to create life.
That's
if
right.
you understand where I'm coming from.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so
definitely. Exactly. It's a very good point.
That for me is the proof that everything is a mind before matter universe. You can create life with thought.
Yeah.
And, so that means that everything that you're looking at essentially is consciousness. And that's my way of that's where I come from with a lot of this. And given the 11s, connected with the Pentagon and connected with the 9/11 World Trade Center disaster and everything, that to me is indicative of someone else trying to hijack consciousness. I don't know what it is, but for me, there seems to be some kind of other side of things that are hijacking this number for themselves.